So we'd like to welcome everyone to the Rebuilding Me 101 Facebook group. It's good to see so many of us here. We've got some new folks, so welcome. It's always exciting. Tonight we're going to talk about a great subject. Sometimes we've got to reason with people who are promoting a low-cal diet. We might even have to kind of figure out why in our own minds do we do intermittent fasting and keto when maybe low-cal still burns calories. And that might be the way to go, according to some people. In fact, wouldn't you agree that mainstream thinking is that if you burn more calories than you take in, then you will lose weight? And if we look at it from a purely mathematical point of view, that seems to work. However, what's not being taken into account is that there is a chemistry, a chemical response if we go about lowering our calories the wrong way. Do you remember a couple of weeks ago, we talked about that the language that our body speaks is chemistry, and we've got to learn that language? Well, this evening, we're going to learn about the chemistry of a low-cal diet versus a keto diet or intermittent fasting. They're on the same plane. We'll talk about, well, how is there a difference? Where is there harm? What is the harm in doing low-cal? And isn't it less extreme? So let's develop that thought. What is the missing critical element that people are missing when they promote the low-cal diet? Well, we've already hinted at it. It is the chemical response that the body takes on. What do I mean by that? Let's explain it. Let's sort of unpack this and look at it from some isolated points, and then we'll pull it all together. A caloric restricted diet, sometimes I call it, and I've heard other people call it, a torture diet, really means you are putting your body under tremendous stress because you are now giving it enough food to want more, but it's not the normal caloric intake that your homeostasis or your normal state of existence is used to. So you are now stressing it out. Well, what happens when that goes on? Well, you couldn't pick a better diet that would be more designed to store fat. Let me say that again. Store fat on the low caloric intake diet than this diet. Well, if that's true, Troy, then how come people lose weight? That's a great question. I hope you're enjoying the conversation I'm having with myself. Here's the answer. You can lose substantial weight for a while. In fact, advertisers love this because you could lose weight up to about 12 weeks when the body says, hey, this is no good. I don't like this. We're going to adjust our metabolism to meet your new caloric intake. Now you are sent a signal to your body. Yes, there's food. We're not quite starving, but it's really reduced. So the body meets you with this response to your chemical message, and it says, let me match the metabolism to the amount of calories coming in. Now, you can guess what happens if after several months of losing weight, being successful, putting yourself through torture, as it were, and you finally go back to eating. Can you guess what your body now does with these new calories that are above and beyond your now normal caloric intake? Here's what happens. This is an example. Let me read this from one clinical study. If you have, oh, here it is. If you have, for example, gotten your body used to, the metabolism used to something as low as 800 calories, then what happens is your metabolism adjusts to now getting 800 calories. You've sent the chemical message that, yes, there's food, but there's not enough food. So we've got to reduce how we burn the amount of fuel. And so if you get your metabolism down to about the 800 level of calories, then what could essentially happen is anything over the 800 now immediately goes into storage. So imagine that you may have once had a 2,000 calorie per day diet that you were enjoying, but you were trying to lose weight, and you did. And for 12 weeks you did, But now your body says, well, we've only got 800 calories in the world we're living in, so we're going to match that metabolical rate. So anything over 800, just 20 calories. Can you imagine that? You went from 2,000 to now 820 calories. The body says, oh, grab those 20 extra calories. Let's save them because we're about to starve. Something's wrong in the environment. There isn't as much food as we used to have. So how is that different than when we do the intermittent fasting or the temporary starving ourselves, as it were? We're not promoting starving. We're certainly saying stopping food. Some of us fast for 72 hours and so forth. So what's the difference? Well, there is a threshold, and it can be just a couple of hundred calories from what your body perceives as a preparing to have no food or preparing for a starvation mode. So it thinks the food is around, as we said, but it's not much. So we've got to adjust. But if you go just a little further and you cross the line instead of low cal and you go to no cal, guess what? Your body has now just got a very different message than low cal. Now it says, this is kind of like an emergency. And so the body says, now we go into changing our energy source. We do not have caloric intake. Open up the fat stores. And that's what we all want. See, here's the deception. Let me review. Your body will work with you to lose substantial weight up to 12 weeks. You can be the biggest loser, hit the gym 6 hours a day, and you could really be killing yourself. Go home and you can have your half a carrot with a couple of seeds and split a grape. Hyperbole, of course, but you get the point. And you'd be miserable. You'd be better to just cross the threshold from low cal, go to no cal, and now your body will open up the fat stores. And we all know you're in a state of ketosis, and now you can cruise into fat burning mode, and you will have lots of energy as opposed to living with misery. And guess what? You can have a lot of calories, right? When you're in ketosis, you can eat fairly normal. So let's go backwards now. We kind of gave you the basics of it, and let's just examine this question. And you may have already seen the intimation of it. What is the harm in low cal? The harm is that you send your body and your hormones into crisis. It is preparing to starve, but you never make that commitment of true starving. And so it stays in this limbo of trying to selfishly hoard and prepare for starvation, but you never get there. So the body now changes its whole metabolic rate. You may have once been, your mitochondria have been burning lots and lots of calories. Those little campfires in your cells were burning hot, doing well, and they were working like clockwork at a much higher rate. The harm is that all goes back into and pulls itself back. It's as if you had fires on the stove and you turned all the flames really, really low. The pilot is barely burning, so it's hard to get cooking, isn't it? And that's exactly what happens to your mitochondria when you stay in the low cal. Is that harmful? Well, yes, it's harmful because you've changed your whole body's ability to burn metabolism. You've actually created a state of metabolic crisis. Your hormonal responses are bordering on depression. The brain cognitive works are just not there. The energy stores in the muscles are working on emergency power or very low power. That would actually be more accurate than to say emergency power, because we could truly say the emergency power would be if we did the no cal and went into ketosis. So the body registers, I'm going to read this from one study. The body registered a trickle of incoming fuel. Those limited resources transmitted a message that you are about to face starvation. Keyword about. Never do they actually enter a time of absent calories. So now they store calories away because there's famine coming. People on starvation or reduced calorie diets are only a few hundred calories away from a biochemical state where their cells say the opposite message. In other words, they're only a few hundred calories away from going in ketosis, where now the message is we have lots of energy. It's in the form of fat. So that's the language that the body speaks. Low-calorie diet gradually slows down your metabolism. It conserves every possible calorie. As we've said, the internal furnace is reduced, the energy burned in the mitochondria throughout the body. The translation is you're tired. You can't function. You can't do your job right. Your communication with people in your household is strained because you're irritable and tired. These are no ways to live. And yet this is what most people think. They got to suck it up and be disciplined, be tough, and do the low-cal diet. And it's just not working. I like to do this last quote here. The low-calorie diet provides the ideal chemistry to keep the fat inside your cells. The longer you stick on your torture-based diet, the greater damage to your metabolic motor. And we know those are the mitochondria that we spoke of. You are simply caught in a race to the bottom. If you've done any research on the show, The Biggest Losers, and you track those folks, almost all of them, pretty much the majority, there's a couple of exceptions, almost all of them put the weight on and more. And how many people do you know have put on the weight and even more after they've come off of these low-cal diets? But it's great for advertisers because you can say, boy, in 10 weeks, I lost 25 pounds. Give it another 5 weeks and check in and see what happens. It's a whole different story. So that answers that question. And there is a beautiful answer that I hope that sort of gives you the answer that intermittent fasting, let me close with this. It sends a very clear and distinct chemical message to your body. Remember we said we've got to speak the language of chemistry? We just keep coming back to that, don't we? Intermittent fasting sends a very clear and distinct chemical message to shift and adapt to no calories for the next 12 to 36 hours, however you long remain fasting. See, that's very different than trying to hoard and save your calories. When you eat, if you do not wreck that chemical shift, if you don't mess with the chemistry, in other words, if you don't come out of ketosis, you're going to continue to burn fat, even though you're eating again. Isn't that great? That's the great thing about ketosis. You can have, as Daryl says, you can have your bacon, and we love our bacon, and you can have eggs, and you can have plenty of food, not be in that caloric restrictive diet, the torture diet, and you still are burning fat. Last question. People may say, yeah, but Troy, it's all about burning the calories, right? So why do you say we don't worry about calories in ketosis? The truth of the matter is calories do matter even when you're in ketosis. Now, I may be introducing a whole new concept here, but let me explain. The difference is the calories don't matter until you get into ketosis. The first job when you get on our diet is to get into ketosis. Once that happens, and then you add the intermittent fasting to it, even though you're not counting calories, you can be sure that you're burning more calories. In fact, even when you're not eating, you're burning the fat. I think we all get that. So you are burning calories. You are in a deficit of calories. Now, this is a good example of why you may have seen questions come across our board sometimes. When you come off a fast, try to eat normal, because then that creates the deficit of calories. If you come off of a fast and you say, bring on the feast, and you just sit there at the table forever, well, then you've undone the benefits of the fast, because by nature or by the rhythm of intermittent fasting with a keto diet, they're on the same spectrum. They're all burning the same calories. You are losing and burning calories. You're in a calorie restricted diet without focusing on calories. So the focus is ketosis. You don't need to count the calories, but if your rhythm is working right and you're in a window and you're in ketosis, you can be sure you're creating a caloric deficit. You add walking to that or moderate exercise, you don't have to count the calories. So that's why you hear us sometimes say calories don't matter. And scientifically speaking, that's just not true, because we do ultimately have to burn more calories than we take in. However, the rhythm of a keto diet in conjunction with intermittent fasting and a little bit of exercise, you never have to consciously count the calories. So I hope that explains why it's so important, why a caloric restrictive diet is not good. And you know something that a lot of the advertisement and doctors don't know by understanding this. So let's unmute yourselves and let's see what your responses have been as you've done this program, not worrying about calories.